Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We'll get the meeting started. This meeting and all the meetings of this committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin statutes so that the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. Okay, as far as roll call, it looks like Dwayne is missing yet, so I'll get started. Do we have a motion on the agenda?
Mark moves to approve.
Move to
Agenda is
approve.
presented.
Mark did. I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next are the minutes of the previous meetings of September 10th, 2025 and September 25th special meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we'll have public comment. Anybody here for public comment? Okay, I guess first on the agenda is Heidi on the finance department.
Morning.
Morning.
The first item is the 2026 budget. So after the meeting yesterday, I was able to put in the motions that were made at county board. And so I've updated the summary pages for you. On the first page at the top, you can see that under non-program miscellaneous revenues, that's that transfer in of $750,000. And then as you go down, you can see where we've applied fund balance. The county clerk's area, this is for elections every other year. We, to keep that levy stable, we're levying the same amount for elections, and then the, 1 year we're increasing fund balance, and then in that off year we're decreasing it based upon the bigger election years. And then we've got non-lapsing appropriation for the human resources area, and then under the maintenance department, where that's a unassigned fund balance. That's for the use of those secondary facilities that we're maintaining during construction. So those are one-time costs. And then under law enforcement, we've got $33,000 of dive team donations that will be purchasing the dive team boat. Under UW extension, as you remember, we had closed out, we're going to close out those liability accounts, and these are funds to assist in that, to offset those costs that they have for technology. For contingency appropriation right now, I had utilized unassigned fund balance of the full $125,000, but after those motions yesterday, right now we're just utilizing $5,389. And then the transfer in the fund balance usage is for the wetland mitigation bank. And so overall, in the general fund, the net levy impact is $9,487. Just understanding that $750,000 is being transferred to the general fund. That's why that increase is somewhat smaller in the general fund. The anticipation is just as an overall county process. And then on page 2, you can see we've got the transfer into transportation services. This is the sales tax portion for construction projects. In the economic development, you'll see the transfer out, and we're applying the $750,000 fund balance in that fund for that transfer out to general fund. And you can see where I've added the $96,715 to human services for opioid settlement. And then you can see the offset out of the opioid settlement fund with a fund balance usage of $75,865. Again, as Diane mentioned yesterday, we do have what's budgeted for revenue in the opioid settlement fund is what I know is scheduled to come. We don't know what the additional amounts are going to be right now. So I went out to the website when I reported the revenue and just looked what was or budgeted for what was to come. So that number is probably smaller than it shows. And so, but I just want to make sure we have a budget. I just don't know what those numbers are at this point.
We don't have a timeline of when we're gonna get that
Yeah.
information either. So we just met the deadline to participate in the settlement agreements, which was the end of September, but we don't know when those funds will
And
be
they don't even have
released.
all of the agreements that we've already entered into out on the website for future payments. So that's just where I'm at on that. And then on the transfer into the wetland and mitigation bank, that's the fund balance usage in the general fund. Then we have in the debt service fund, we have the fund balance applied. This is for the net proceeds where we had to apply against our interest payment for 2025. Then that bond premium will be completed, but then that resulted, those two changes, that debt service actually resulted in a $56,873 decrease in levy. In the capital improvement fund, we're transferring in $1,079,156 of sales tax to cover the capital projects. And then the remaining is fund balance usage. Remember, we had $300,000 assigned, already allocated for the law enforcement roof. And then we had $263,000 assigned for the tracked index project. Those two projects were removed. And then we're using that the funds that we've already allocated for those two projects to fund the jail control system. So that's where that fund balance usage is coming into play. There is a little bit more than that in here. I needed that to balance budget, but we do have those funds in the capital improvement fund to fund those. That additional amount was like $29,844, if I'm remembering correctly. And then you have the highway operation funds with highway operations that has no levy impact. So again, you know, the allowable levy increase is $284,794. Debt levy decreased $56,873, and the bridge aids increased $64,736. And library aids, and then the bridge aids remain stable at $53,000. Any questions on that piece? Okay. Then on page 3, this is the analysis of the levy. We've got the levy limit worksheet is the first half of it with the adjustment for debt service. So between operating levy was $298,622. We have then you have your debt levy, a decrease of $56,873. These two levies are on the levy limit worksheet, and then you have county share of refunded or rescinded taxes. This is an amount that we don't receive until the budget is actually in place, and so that is accounted for once we receive that number. If we have any refunded or rescinded taxes, that is not part of levy limits, along with the library aids and then the county bridge aids. So overall, we have a $290,377 increase to property tax, or 0.95%. The equalized value, less the TID increment, increased 8.37%. So that means the net tax rate went from $4.52 per thousand to $4.21, or a decrease of 31 cents, 6.86%. And then
Just a question on that page, that you're heading at the very top where it says change, that should be from 2024.
And then the back page, we have a summary of the equalized value. This shows, you know, obviously the tax rate depending on the municipality. So not all municipalities are charged for the library aids, and not all municipalities participate in the bridge aids. So you can see the different rates within each municipality and the net change percentage wise of the tax levy. The town total went up 0.65% overall. The village total went up 9.2%, and the city total went up 0.48%. The most significant changes were, if you look at it all the way down, Village of Big Falls actually decreased 12.10%. Village of Fremont was increased by 12.6%. Ogdensburg and Sandy. You can see that the villages are the ones that are having some of the largest increases based upon the equalized value that was allocated based upon the state figures. So those are out of our control. That's what the state gives us for those.
Just out of curiosity, how did they fall 12%? Big Falls.
It's a calculation that the state does based upon they equalize assessed values across the whole county. So the equalized value is a calculation done at the state. So
I don't know if I've ever seen it drop to 0.
Well, you're dealing with small numbers, so the percentage is
right,
gonna be.
absolutely. You're dealing with, yeah, right. I mean, it was only a $3,000 decrease in the equalized value, but I mean, so their equalized value dropped 5.73%, but their net levy dropped 3,000. You know, that's a calculation done at the state, and
Yeah.
we're given those numbers, and that's the numbers that we are required to use. So, but overall, that's what we have for after everything was done yesterday. And again, I just want to thank everyone for the work that was done on the budget. It was definitely a difficult process, and I understand that. One thing I do want to make note of is, you know, yesterday was a little bit stressful on our part, and so you know, you can't think through every question. So Pete, I apologize, but yes, we will need a special finance committee meeting, and I'm hoping that we can do that the week before the county board on the 28th. Reason being, because of the not knowing what was going to happen yesterday, we have a number of resolutions that have to come to the finance committee to hit the county board on the 28th. The resolutions would be for the cost of living and the new positions, and well, the changes in positions as well. So. And then we'll have to coordinate that with Human Resources Committee as well. So those resolutions will have to come back to finance before we move on.
So you're talking a little.
Well,
before.
the county board meets is late this month because it's the reading of the budget, and it's on October 28th. So I was kind of hoping it would be the week before, which would give me a little more time to prepare and make sure that all those numbers are accurate. And make sure we have, you know, this has all been kind of rushed the last couple of weeks. So I just want to make sure that I got everything correct before I come back to finance. So that would be that week if at all possible.
And HR has to meet before.
HR, and I talked to Mandy, she thinks that she'd be able to coordinate that meeting the same day, that they could maybe meet prior to, so that we could just go from one to the next.
Yeah, ideally that'd be perfect.
'Cause their stuff has to happen first before we act on it.
Correct. And that also, going into that week, gives Mandy a little more flexibility with her committee to, in case that date doesn't work for her committee, then gives her a little bit more flexibility to get something scheduled with her committee.
Sundays are open, man.
I'm fine with that.
So what day for sure are we looking at then?
Does that Wednesday work at all?
22nd?
So the 22nd is also Board of Health. I don't know if any of the members of those committees, if that would overlap, we just keep that in mind.
It's Board of Health, we meet at like 8:15, so.
And so if we were to
It goes pretty quick, so if we have like a 9 o'clock meeting, we could, you know,
and
Board of Health would finish and then we could go into
HR,
HR and then go into.
that would be, I mean,
So what time should we be looking at?
if they meet at
Karen?
8,
9, well, we meet, Board of Health meets at like 8:15. And so if we meet at like 9:30, that would give us more than enough time to get that meeting done.
What about the human resources? They have- or is
I
it-
don't
wonder-
know if I have any overlap between committees. Should give that a thought. I don't think so, so we could maybe meet at the same time with the health meetings, so you could still be on at 9 o'clock.
So it's 9 o'clock is okay for
For
us.
finance, I would think so.
9 o'clock on the 18th.
22nd.
22nd.
Mark and I have our interim hearing at 11, so if we duck out, that's why.
There's East Central meeting that both
22nd.
Dwayne and I are involved with on that day,
Okay. What time is that?
9 o'clock.
That was 27th, you went to. Yeah. We can double check that.
Would Thursday work?
the 23rd.
Yeah,
Judy.
we have a new employee orientation at 8.
27th, looks like that's it. 22nd.
No, the 27th.
Right.
27th is the day.
Friday works.
Did we say no to the 23rd?
Lila can't do it on the 23rd.
But if I'm the only one, just go ahead and meet.
Would the 21st be too early? That would be a Tuesday.
That actually, the 21st is fine for me. I mean, any day that week I can make work. I just, whatever works. 21st would be when county board would have normally.
That would have been the normal county board day,
Yeah, so
yes.
there shouldn't be any conflicts with other
Yeah, there's no
committees.
other committees that day?
Mandy?
If we'll try for that, I'll connect up with Dwayne and make sure that works for him.
Okay,
So tentatively, we'll plan at the 21st at 9 AM for finance.
21st.
Yep, it's a Tuesday.
Okay.
Then I'll. Thank you. Any other questions on the budget? Alright,
I have a question, but I'm not sure how the timing of it is right. I had talked to some people yesterday and before that, and one of the benefits that the county gives the employees is having their birthdays off. So I looked up and I don't know, there's 403 people or 456 people, but if you take 403 people by 8 hours, that's 3,224 hours. Which if you use $30, which I looked at the span, we go anywhere from like 20 to like 60 plus. So I just used 30. That's around $100,000 of a benefit that we give to the employees above and beyond what their personal time off was. It was an addition that we did in 2016 or 2018. And I just don't know that that is still something that we should be doing. I mean, I would much rather see that money go over to Casey to do that road that poor Cindy Harding has been trying to put off forever. But I don't know when is the right time to bring that up. Is it now or will it be next year? Or, I mean, I'm not trying to take stuff away from the employees because they are our biggest asset. And I know one of the supervisors mentioned to me when they're recruiting or when people stay, that's kind of a big deal. But it's an expensive big deal, in my opinion.
yeah, and I understand your calculation. It wouldn't be a direct budget impact because where it would impact is overtime in the sheriff's department. But like, we budget for 2,080 hours, we don't budget for 2,088. So it's not like, like for I get a salary, whether, I'm here or I'm not here. So if I, if I don't take my if I take my birthday, I'm either working 8 hours, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like we can take that out of the budget necessarily, because it's not knowing that, like, what that would reduce the overtime in the sheriff's department or those departments that have to cover it with overtime. But it's, I don't have staff that covers vacation, so we just cover time off with the current staff that we have. We don't,
Right, but that's a benefit. I mean, the county is paying for people not to be here
correct.
for 8 hours.
But I wouldn't be able to reduce the budget and give that money to
Oh.
Casey, is what I'm saying.
I see.
Is because it would just mean that they'd just be here one more day than they are tomorrow, than they are this year. But it's not like, we're either paying them to be here or we're paying them to not be here, so they're getting paid. So I can't reduce the budget unless we say, okay, we're gonna give you a birthday off, but we're not gonna pay you for it, kind of thing. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if you have people here on that day, they're being productive and they're working.
Right, exactly, but the cost would still be there.
The cost would be there, right?
Yeah.
But they'd actually be working.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I agree, yes, but it wouldn't have the budget impact to take money out of the budget to give it over somewhere else. Because they're getting paid whether they're here or they're not.
Right, but I mean, it'll fall into a bucket of vacation or paid time off. It will fall into one of those if we continue doing it, is what I'm
Correct.
saying.
Correct, yes.
Otherwise, that expense would go away from health and humans, from HR.
No, it's in everybody's budget. Everybody's
Oh.
budget gets charged
2080.
for, yep. Gets charged, every budget has their full-time equivalent in their budget, whether it's.
We could give them another couple days off too. And it wouldn't affect the budget.
Right,
That's right.
unless you're in a 24/7 operation that you have to cover those time
Well, I
off
guess
with
that
overtime.
is my point. I just think that useful.
And that's in the HR, human resources policy, so it would have to be a policy adjustment within human resources.
And do you remember when that went into effect? And why it went into effect? It was another added paid time.
It was
off.
added,
After 2017, because I didn't get my birthday.
Yes, it was a policy change in 2017 to be implemented for 2018. And that was the reason behind it was at that time, we weren't offering vacation to new employees coming in. You had to wait a year before you got that time off. And so we knew we had to make an adjustment for those new employees coming in just from a recruitment and retention standpoint. And then it was a discussion, about, well, the new employees are always getting the benefit. What about us that have been here a while? That was the discussion. And so kind of the offset was that, we'll give everybody a birthday, and that's something the Foundry has. It really came from someone talking about, that's a great benefit, that works great for them. So the offset was we're gonna move the vacation schedule up for new employees and we're gonna give everybody their birthday off. And if that is really something that the committee wants to do, I would rather see us adjust the PTO schedule versus the birthday. I mean, that's a very personal thing to people. It's a huge recruitment and retention piece, and people appreciate that, but that would definitely be like going back to the HR committee for discussion.
And maybe, I think you were talking about it yesterday, Dave, is trying to set some meetings up where we have these type of discussions, where that's all we talk about. Where do you see a benefit or something that could be cut or added or money coming in? So that it's just like a round table type thing where, and then bring it to the appropriate committees to bring it to the board. But I think we need to have some of those brainstorming sessions to come up with stuff like that.
That's all. I just wanted to bring it out into the open.
appreciate that. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, and then moving on to the financial review. On page 1 of 9, you can see that on the operating cash flow, we remain about 4 million below what our balance was last year. at 32.6 million. And then in September, you can see that the tax certificates, that's when we booked the certificates for 2024. And so that balance is about 71,937 higher than the previous year at 1.7 million. The current balance of interest on investments of 1.5 million is 171,000 lower than it was the previous year. And interest on delinquent taxes is also about 44,483 less than 2024 at 263,888. So, but we are projected to come in a little bit over budget on that piece. Current sales tax collected, it's an increase of 388,000 from last year. And we are projected to be about, still, the projections are the same as last month at 375,000 over budget if we maintain the last 3 months as we have in previous years. General government fund revenues are about 4.4 million, under 75% of the budget. But if you look at the graphs, we're about equal to where we were last year. And you can always see that at the end of the year, we do spike in the revenue area for that piece. On the expenses for operating, we're about 3.7 under 75%. And again, if you look at the graph, you can see we're about right in line as we have been in last year and previous years. And again, that does spike up at the end of the year as well. We do see an increase, but overall, the operating revenues and expenditures are both under, but we'll see where that takes us. As far as the highway cash flows, we're at 2.8 million at the end of September. And we're about where we were at 2024. Looking at the graph, you can see that the balance is about where it was at that point as well. I'm looking at the detail. Again, in August, this should say 75%. In September, this was something I did last night, so I apologize. It was a little off track, but the numbers are through September of 2025. Overall, we're at 71% of revenue in the general fund. Everything is, most areas are coming in. When you look at the intergovernmental areas, we book revenue more at the end of the year in that piece. Commercial revenues, which is your interest on investments, is at about 112%. Other commercial revenues as well. Expenses are at 68% overall. And each category is falling in line under budget, but we would anticipate personal services to be at 70%. So all those are right in line. Right now, that change in fund balance is 879,000, and we estimated a 2.1 million percent or 2.1 million change. So a little bit under what we would have anticipated in the general fund. Health and Human Services is at about 72% for revenue. Their intergovernmental revenues will probably start leveling off. We see, they pay down on, pay out their contracts as with the state as we have expenditures. So a lot of those contracts have been met. So those you'll start seeing, even though that's a little bit higher, you'll start to see that level off a little bit. And then overall, they're at 72% of revenue. And then as you go down to their expenses, you can see that they're, even though they're under in their personal services, the contracted services line item is at 85%. And that is really reflects the out-of-home placements and institutional care. So, but right now they're at 69%. And their usage of net increase in fund balance right now is at 542 increase. So they're looking a little bit better. They're looking good right now. So we'll see how that fund falls out. The Transportation Services Fund, we've got that piece in there right now. I'm trying to think when the expenses were booked through. Kristen, what invoice did you just send me through? Okay, so this is through August. So we're in line on those expenditures as well. And so overall, the general government funds are performing as I would have anticipated. Special revenue funds, the economic development fund, we have where we're gonna be drawing down $750,000 of that broadband expansion project in 2026, but that's got a balance right now of 1 million, just over $1 million. The environmental program, $4,667 remaining in there. We're hoping we can get that closed out in 2026. ARPA funds, these are just interest earnings, and once those as those long-term investments have been coming due, Mark's been transferring that money out, and so once we've got that account closed, that interest will move over to the capital improvement fund to fund those projects that we had utilized interest to fund that for. And then the wetland bank, mitigation bank, is at a deficit of 1.3 million. And then the opioid settlement fund, this question was asked yesterday and I was a little bit off base, but I just hate blurting out numbers when I don't know them off the top of my head. So right now that fund is sitting at about $850,000, with ongoing revenues coming in. We've collected right now $169,616 in settlement funds themselves. And then interest earnings on that has been about $30,000 year to date. And then we did receive the TAD grant. So a portion of the TAD grant has offset some of the drug court expenditures. So right now that fund is at $850,515. And then you can see all the capital improvement plan where we're at on those projects. Of the 11.9 million budgeted, 6.8 million has been spent, and we've got about 5 million remaining through those projects. That number seems really weird to me, so I'll have to reevaluate that one. And then we've got the courthouse renovation project. That's, you can see where what we've obligated, what's expended, and what's remaining. Again, the two pieces above it highlighted are the big question marks to see if that funding comes in to cover the cost of the project itself. That's what I have for the financial review. Any questions?
I think that's it, thanks, Heidi.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the treasurer's report, Mark.
Morning,
Morning.
Alright, first piece on interim, I've got several things with that one. I talked last month, we had that property for sale in the city of Clintonville. That was that home that had been empty and burnt. I did get a accepted offer on that and bid for the $30,000, which is our minimum bid. So I'm working through that process. They have actually 30 days for the balance to come in and how they're going to take title and stuff. But very pleased that property should be off our records here very soon and targeted to hopefully be renovated and improvements for the city of Clintonville. So I'm very pleased that we finally got that one done. I gave you a printout of our 2021 list. Again, these are delinquencies from 2021 that we've been really working on these for almost a year is when they first, they get their normal delinquencies, but roughly a year from ago, they got their first notice that their property is up for potential losing due to in-rem foreclosure due to their taxes. So if you remember, I've talked about this almost every month for the last 7-8 months that we started at 70 some parcels, but we are targeted to go to court on the 27th. And this is our list that Diane will be filing. It will be their final notice of these six owners with 10 parcels. I wanted you to have this list just so you can see these if there's any of them in your district that you know anything about. It's really getting down to the 11th hour. We're only a couple weeks away from going to court on these. Most of them, I've not heard boo. Couple I have heard, and I just don't think they don't have the means, or it's not much they can do about it. The one that struggles the most with would be the start number 33, the Markman. We've not gotten any response on that, and that's all vacant acreage. There's 5 parcels, and you're talking almost 40 acres. That one baffles me because the amount due is not exorbitant by any means, because a lot of it was in MFL, the town of Mucklaw. So we're trying to ensure proper, any other addresses we can send notice to as far as to reach these people, but I've not heard boo from that one. Really seems odd to me. Otherwise, the other ones, I know one of them is deceased. I think there may be even 2 of them are deceased. Vacant houses, so nothing too out of the normal. We have 4 unknowns that we're targeting to take back as well. So I gave you this list. If you know anything on these, please let me know. But otherwise, we target to go to court on the 27th.
Cardinal Street in London, that's nice. A newer subdivision. So that house is probably in the 300,000 to 400,000 range.
Now, that's the assessed value on that one's 88.
Really?
Yep. Right. That one's think I've had some calls, and I actually had a realtor call me once about that, trying to track down the owner. So I don't know if that is one of the owners that's deceased or not. But yeah, anything you find out, I just want to make sure they're aware of it. We've sent tons of notices, and it's always my concern. But my biggest thing is these are all ones that had plenty of notice and not received payments, and these will be on our list here. Not going to court. So. Any questions on any of these?
Got a guy from Enid, a lot of land.
Yes, that's the one that I guess if anybody knows any contacts with that, I think it's a good thing. And we've done our due diligence. We will be sending out certified notices of their court date. But it's just odd that it just seems odd for that kind of acreage that they would allow that to go and without and it's not, again, big dollars. If you look at the column, that's the principal balances, but those are mostly an MFL. So I mean their total to bring this out is probably not more than $1,500. I don't know offhand, but I mean their base is very small because it was an MFL. So but why don't you guys have that list?
The way land values and everything is going.
Yeah,
down.
it
crazy
doesn't
that-
make any sense. I mean, the bottom line though, I mean, with the new laws, I mean, any sales proceeds is gonna go back to the owner, but yet for me and us to go through all this process to sell it, and we just get our costs out of it, and by law, I have to return the funds to the owner. I mean, they're gonna get their funds out of it, but and I know, I mean, how I'm gonna advertise it versus maybe a realtor putting it out there into the valley or something like that, who knows? I mean, but this will, I'm not worried at all selling it whatsoever. This will sell very easily. I'm sure we'll get a very good value, but it's just a lot of work for us getting nothing out of it, so.
Do you think they'll change that?
No, they changed that to go to this direction.
I
In the
remember
past, we used to, the only time the profit went back to the homeowner was in case it was their primary residence. And then they by law had to sign a affidavit stating, yes, I want it. Now they changed the law, it's all properties. And basically they don't have to sign anything. So we send a check to the address on here of the sale, regardless of whether they contact or not. I'll talk about it in a bit with the unknowns. Basically, it's 10 years before we really can realize the funds on that because it was going through unclaimed checks process. So
It has to be 10 years in unclaimed.
10 years. So it's
There's only 5, so that's a long.
it's a really ridiculous process, but it is what they've done.
Ones in Moscow, can you say if they're on the river frontage at all?
I don't know. I don't, without looking at the maps, but I've not looked at them. I mainly just looked at the acreage and just, like I said, we've not heard boo from them. A couple of people have called on inquired. I know a couple of them, I have hope something's gonna happen between, because again, they still can come get this off. We've had people show up the day of court. We've had them show up that morning and we've come to agreement and they come off. So I would love to see all these show up, but I think it's gonna be tough for a couple of them because I think they're deceased.
Yeah, that makes it.
Yeah, that makes it well.
Any questions on that? The other piece I've been talking about was those unknown owners. Again, we did advertise all those parcels that we took back, and we started to had 74 parcels that we advertised for sale at various prices. The minimum bid is based on the most recent, again, by what we set up as our ordinance and meeting law would be the most recent assessed value. So we had 74 of those parcels. We did pull 4 parcels from the sale due to various reasons. Some was, I tried to make sure we contact all adjacent landowners, and one parcel had a piece I missed. There was some concerning pieces that I just think we're gonna create a hornet's nest, and it makes sense to look at it again. One gentleman brought in information that we did not have recorded that would have made it show that it was their parcel, so we can only go by what's recorded. So we did pull 4 parcels, so we had 70 that we opened bids for. Of those, we got 48 bids on, our 48 parcels received bids on, 22 parcels we did not receive bids on. Not totally surprised that we had some there, some were a little bit surprising, but again, some of them are due to the price. Again, assessed value is probably on the high side on some of these. I'll be reviewing those 22 to advertise at a lower price. That will take a little time to figure that out, but we'll look at putting those back out there again. So the 48 parcels that we're gonna sell, we had a total amount of bids of over $142,000 on those 48 parcels. We had 66 total bids, so we definitely had some parcels with multiple bids. Our initial scrub on that, I was very pleased that there was none of them that were outside that border. So I was very pleased to see that. So I think all of them are gonna go through. Certainly you're gonna have some neighbors that are not happy that another neighbor has it, whatever. They all had the right to bid. And in most of those cases that were concerning for me, they did have each side did bid, and you have a higher bid, and it's the only process we can work with. So those I'll be working through, getting notices out to those with the high bids and get those sold and recorded, and what we've designated to do, get these back on the tax roll. So with that, any questions on the interim piece? Okay, as far as the financial review, you'll see some red up there with some funds coming out of the cash, Associated Bank, Bank First. Again, this is the time of year I don't have a lot of money coming in, again, because tax collections are completed. We've paid out all the funds, so typically our September through December, early December are with a lot of moving funds around to cover expenses through that time period, so that's not surprising to see that. So I did move some funds around. You'll see Bank First investment, I did pull $500,000 out of that account for 2 reasons. One, we needed the funds to cover, and 2, again, that was our lowest rate that we were receiving on the funds, on liquid funds, so I felt it was worthwhile, and it was even more worthwhile because once I pulled it, they did reach out to ask if there's a way to keep those funds in there, and I said, yeah, increase your rate, which they have. They're not getting the 500,000 back, but they did bump that up from 2.43 to 3.15%. So we're gonna get a little more money on those funds. So that's a good thing in the big picture. Again, Bank First, we have 3 of their branches that collect taxes for us, which is a huge service to us in our county. So I feel there's some major value with having interest with them. So I was glad to see that happen. Heidi mentioned the ARPA funds. So if you go down to the bottom, the ARPA funds have been moved. Was about $4.2 million did go into our WISC investment funds. If you look up top, you'll see WISC was a current month of 2.3 million of positive. But 4.2 went into that, were ARPA funds, but I did have to move 2 million out of there and bring it back into our general account to cover payroll payable. So that's why you see 2.3 versus 4.2. But so the ARPA funds have been moved. There's just a small balance out there of $1,600, and that will be cleared and moved over this month as well. So next month, ARPA should be at 0. And noting the WISC, the very bottom one, the promissory notes is WISC funds. Account balance is about over $28 million. If you look at the report that Heidi gave us, page 9, you know, they're showing total project estimate of 28.3 million out there. Again, we have roughly 29 million out in our investment or our holding in WISC funds from our promissory notes and covering our that building project. So, and we have those funds invested in some cases. We're earning for the most part over 4% on those, that 28 million. We have some of it, I just did, if you'll see in the very bottom line, we did put some money into CDs for a year that we're going to get about 3.9% on all those 1.6 million for 12 months. So we get a request a draw schedule on what we're looking at as far as our draws to Myron and for the improvements. You know, we're trying to invest based off of that. We could leave all those funds in the IS balance, but that's a money market account. So that can fluctuate daily. So just trying to lock up some of these funds as long as we can to ensure we're going to get it, because rates are going down. Last month they dropped the prime rate by 1/4, and there's talk of 2 more yet before the end of the year. So rates are going to be under 4% before long. Let's see what else I got. Tax certificates, Heidi mentioned that as well. Again, September we do roll over all those delinquent taxes of 2024 are issued a tax certificate, puts on notice that within 2 years we can take back the property if they're delinquent. So that's very common that we would see a major spike in the tax certificates. With month end, even now we're about 44,000 over last year. So we have cut into that where we were last year already. Just again, tax certificates gets noticed. People get those letters that says we take their property, and they typically draw some attention. I get a lot of calls. I can send them delinquent notice since I'm blue in the face, but send anyone that they could lose their property typically gets another level of response. So that's not uncommon. That September was a pretty decent pay, and delinquent taxes, we can see $44,000 was paid. Sales tax, as Heidi noted, we're about 388,000 over last year through 9 months. So we're on a really good pace to exceed our budget there. So that continues to increase every month. So again, I don't know if we're selling more. I just think costs are more. So I think that's part of it as much as anything, but it's helping us in the big picture, and should help us through by year end and where we based off our budget for 2026. Last thing I would have is just like interest rates. You'll see the liquid rates. I don't have all of them because this is a really early meeting. I don't have the most current statements from Nicolay or Associated, but First State Bank is still at 4.46 on their liquid funds, which is really good. So I expect that to drop with these most recent rate changes. But the longer we can stay at 4%, obviously it's better for us. Next year's budget is kind of based at 3.25 for what I use for a anticipated rate. I hope I'm not being too aggressive with it. That was something that was advised to me based on some of the meetings I've sat in on, so I feel relatively confident with it. But again, if you have 2 more drops of 1/4% in the prime this year, that's all tied to it. This may change quicker than I think, but it just depends on what's happening with the economy.
I think that 3.34 is pretty conservative.
Yeah, I do. I think it was important not to be over aggressive. I think I'd much rather be in here talking like I am this year that we're exceeding our budget in interest on delinquent taxes, which again, that piece is really tied to our delinquencies, but our interest on investments is always good when I can tell you we're above budget versus the opposite. So I'm trying to make sure we're not hurting a year from now when I'm in here talking to it, but again, it's all driven by the economy. And we have to keep a lot of funds liquid. We have some really long-term investments, that are somewhat semi-protected, but certainly, cover our payroll, which is about 770,000 a month, no, 675,000 a month, 675 every 2 weeks, excuse me. That's significant dollars that we have to make sure I have liquid to cover, not to mention our accounts payable. That's what I got for you. Any
Any other
questions?
questions from Mark? Okay, thanks, Mark. Next, the Veterans Office, Jesse.
Good morning, Art.
Did everyone get the new packet? Apologize, I had a little error. The 24 packet got shuffled in, but should have you the new packet this morning here. First order of business was the memorandum coming around for the new schedule of payments. And I believe Pete has that, Supervisor Vasquez. Oh, it's already over there with the. So this year, $1,124 graves for a total of $5,620 was returned. The only non-participating cemetery you'll find was Scandinavia Lutheran. Unfortunately, they did not return an invoice. I don't know if that requires any action.
I think historically we've done a motion to approve it.
$5,620.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Maybe I can ask, what does the cemetery have to do to be included in the list?
So historically, what we've done is we have 34 participating cemeteries, and we have basically by statute, we have an invoice that we send them, and we have the names of the veterans and their spouses that are eligible to participate. And they simply sign the invoice in front of a notary and they return it to us. And it's as simple as that. And
I just don't
sometimes,
see our cemetery, I understand that to ask if, I'll find out if we have veterans.
and unfortunately, it's sometimes the participation, and we'll see a little bit, I have a little bit of it's a good question. I have a little bit of a presentation on that. Sometimes participation is uneven. We have about 66 cemeteries, and I say approximately 66 cemeteries in Waupaca County, but not all of them participate. And about 34 historically have participated, have been identified as eligible to participate. And of those 34, participation is quite uneven year to year. And even of those that have been identified, like I said, it's while it's simple to participate, it's easier said than done. I don't know if that answers. The second order of business was last.
Did we vote on that? I know we had a motion and a second.
We did not.
Oh,
I think
We had a motion by Supervisor,
Supervisor Morak motioned and there was a second.
by Supervisor Muck.
Yeah. I think it was unanimous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay to move on? Okay. Then the second part here was, last year, the committee had asked me to explore the option of stepping down from this, historical program. And within your packet, there's a bit of a timeline. So after the schedule, of payments this year, I give you a little bit of an outline. Toward the back of that packet, I kind of give you a timeline analysis of where we're at, and maybe it's appropriate to start there. Back in 2000, my 2 CVSOs ago, John Ladani had requested or explored the idea back in 2000 of a one-time payout to help establish perpetual care at every cemetery. A payout of $35 per grave for a total cost of just under $40,000 to help these cemeteries establish their perpetual care funds and come off of a one-time payment, kind of a dribble payment plan. At that time, the finance committee said that was untenable. In 2005, and prior to 2005, and we have records that kind of indicate that this function came to our office approximately 1996. Now, I came to the office in September of 2014, so I'm kind of responsible for records 2015 and newer. Cindy in our office came to the office in 1992. And it's kind of unclear exactly when this function came to our office. Prior to, 92 to 96, somewhere in there, the function of the care of veterans' graves process went from the county clerk's office to the veterans' office. So this has been at least going on since 1996, this process. With the payment to each cemetery being somewhat uneven until 2005, meaning the cost per grave was up to the cemetery to charge the county per statute. In 2005, the finance committee and then subsequently the board said, we're gonna pay a flat rate of $5 per grave. So that's kind of the next milestone. And then in 2017, the finance committee asked me to conduct a study and say, is $5 enough? And how many counties are still participating in this process? So a rather comprehensive study was undertaken. 71 to 72 counties reported back to me. At that time, 42 counties were no longer participating in the remuneration for the care of veterans' graves. And $5 was good. The majority of counties were within that $5 band. Very few were paying more than $5 per grave. That's the next kind of milestone in the timeline here. Then in 2024, the finance committee asked, well, let's take a look at discontinuing this. What would that look like again? Maybe not a payout, but maybe a step down process. Is there any appetite for that amongst the cemeteries? So we conducted a survey and asked, and then we came up with a plan of what that might look like. And that's also contained in this packet. So if we kind of back that up a little bit, I produced a memo of the results. Also gave you what we sent to the cemeteries, gave you it's kind of got the watermark that says provided to the cemeteries, gave you exactly what the memo looks like, what the survey looked like, and then the kind of the spreadsheet of what the step down plan would look like you know, starting in 27, and then stepping down 25%. And then terminating ultimately in 2031 with a 0 payment. With a final payment in 2030. What that could look like. And kind of flipping back to the memo or even looking at the executive summary, you can see that the response rate was of the 34 cemeteries that participated or were surveyed, 65% was the response rate. So we had some cemeteries that just didn't respond. They just didn't get back to us. So 35% didn't respond. Of those that did respond, 41% said, yep, that's fine, go ahead and do it. 24% said no. It's a pretty good response rate. It's a small sample size though. And what I would say is that in the past, the discussion around stepping down from a program like this has been looked at as taking something away. What I would say is that if we take a look at statute 45.85, which I printed for you and highlighted, the final sentence of the first paragraph under para 1. And that says the amount of expense charged the county for the care may not exceed the charge made for the care of other graves in the same cemetery. Now, noting that, it's hard to climb into the minds of the legislators when they write these statutes. But one of two certainties will transpire. Number one, I will say this is not meant to supplant perpetual care. One of two certainties will happen. One, you will either, because we are paying for these, for the care of these graves, you will either achieve the same cost of perpetual care charged for other graves, or you will achieve the cost for purchasing the grave of an adjacent grave. One of those two eventualities will happen over time. Are you following what I'm saying? If you were to go to a cemetery today, just as a lay citizen, non-veteran, pick any one of the 66 cemeteries still selling graves, and they were to charge you a fee to buy a plot, whatever that fee is, and then you were to run this program right along next to it, at some point, you will achieve that same price. Whether there's a flat price for that grave or there within inside of that, there's a charge for perpetual care, you will achieve that through this program. So what I'm saying is, you will achieve this part of the statute at some point. And what I'm telling you through this analysis is that since 2005, I think many of these cemeteries have achieved one or the other. So for instance, take Baldwin's Mills, and I've given you kind of the spreadsheet here. Now I had to use an average to fill in the payments between 2005 and 2012 because due to records retention and best efforts, our office didn't retain 2005 to 2012 schedule of payments like I produce and have been produced. In the county clerk, we asked, and also due to records retention, those weren't retained there either, which is, I mean, that's just normal. Due to purging, these records are purged. We had the total amount, and good news, the average that I developed is underneath that amount, so it's a safe average, and that's kicked all the way to the right. So that average column was filled in from 2005 to 2012. So using that average, I'll give you an estimated total cost per grave from 2005 to 2024. Take Baldwin's Mills, for example. We've paid per grave for the 19 graves that we reimbursed for $111.84. So I don't know what they charge per grave if you went there today and bought a grave. But it's for perpetual care, the cost is likely less than $111.84. So now we enter into this part of the statute that says the amount of expense charged the county for the care may not exceed the charge made for the care of other graves in the same cemetery. You're not taking anything away from Baldwin's Mills. You have met your financial and fiduciary responsibility for the perpetual care of veterans' graves at Baldwin's Mills. Because you've met the perpetual care cost fee for Baldwin's Mills. Are you following what I'm saying? So you've done your part as the county. And it's up to Baldwin's Mills to be financially responsible for the fees that you've paid them, is what I'm proposing to you. Now, as you can look down the list, and I can give you another, for example, because some of these cemeteries have participated inconsistently, not all of them have paid $111.84 or have received $111.84 per grave. A good example would be there's a pretty low one here. Take for instance, second from the bottom, Trinity Lutheran. They're a relatively small total grave count, and they're a relatively newer cemetery that came online to the program. $25 per grave. There could be a question there as to what to do with them, or they could, have a question. But the majority of these cemeteries that have participated are, as you can see, quite close to that $90 to $100 range. So the recommendation that I would have for you, given that memorandum, would be to proceed with a step-down plan. Given the survey results and given the results of the analysis, but I'm open to questions and
Yes, sir.
if you keep. Yep.
This sheet here, we're talking $5 per grave, then we're looking over here.
Yep.
At, is this the average per grave?
That was the average I had to produce to fill in the years 2005 to 2012 to get the total cost per grave.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. So that's just the average that would have filled in the columns 2005 to 2012 to achieve the total cost.
That's not, nobody got that much.
The total per grave is what was the estimated amount that they would have received from.
Where does the $5 come from?
That's what we pay them per grave each year. Now, their total annual reimbursement column, they get that check. That would be what they get in the schedule of graves payment. So if you were to look back at like what we just authorized, Baldwin's Mills is paid for 19 graves and they're reimbursed $95, which is what their annual reimbursement is, $95.
Well, there you got, but Graceland in Clintonville, average 405.
Yep.
then we go back to Floral Hill in New London.
Yeah.
250.
Yeah,
Why is there a gross difference?
because of uneven participation over the years.
Most of it was, I'm involved in a little bit because I'm a veteran. A lot of it was the control of the cemetery, who was in charge of it and what record keeping. I noticed in Marion, under, what is it, Greenleaf, they have 102. And the lady that controls it, the two ladies, one's passed away, they did a fantastic, they had records, I mean, perfect records. So they always got their reimbursement. And like he's saying now, if you got $100 for perpetual care, but they've been doing this for 50 years at $5 a grave, they're coming out ahead. So if you have people that had good records, they got reimbursed. If it falls apart and all of a sudden this lady passes to this one, she died, and then all of a sudden nobody knows how the records were kept, then it fell apart sometimes. And then, yeah, because I was involved, there's 4 cemeteries in my area, and one was a Catholic one, and they didn't know about the program, so they never got anything. And then I kind of stuck my nose in it, and then all of a sudden, Jesse is trying to discontinue this program, and I'm going the other way, trying to be helpful and help the cemetery. So, you know, but the modern way of perpetual care, we're paying more than the perpetual care that person bought that gravesite. But you go back to in Marion there's some in there were from the Civil War. So they've been there a long time at $5 a grave, you know. And I say there's not a lot of money there, but it's a lot of work for Jesse's department. So it's to keep this on track. So there, I said my piece.
Okay, then moving another step, the Catholic Cemetery, St. Rose in Clintonville, $788. MPV in New London, 110. Why would there be such a large amount or a big number with a private cemetery?
Different number of graves per cemetery.
Yeah.
And different amounts of participation over the years.
Yeah, MPV has 22 and St. Rose has 172.
Yeah.
So nobody's getting more and nobody's getting less.
So I'm okay with the step down program. How does it address new veterans that pass away?
So they're not added, and that's a great question. So newer veterans, and that was something that the cemeteries were confused by too, because we started getting requests for new cemeteries that were adding veterans, and that's not permitted under statute either. Let's say a veteran passes today and they're buried today. They're not permitted to be added to the rolls of this program because they're purchased under perpetual care. That cost of the care is, when they purchase that plot, the cost is factored in. So that's a different part of the statute. The next sentence up, the expense of the care of the graves and tombstones shall be borne by the county where the graves are located, except where suitable care is otherwise provided. And so where otherwise provided is the carve out for the perpetual care fee that's already charged. So anytime they already, and that's a perfect example. We got one of the surveys back that said, we already have perpetual care fund. We need and appreciate the county funding and any funding we can get. Well, you've proven the point. You know, the point is that you have a perpetual care fund. We pay you this money. It should be put into the perpetual care fund, and you should use that financial instrument and the interest earned on that investment to pay for the care of all the graves, not just, you know, it's you can't just earmark this for the one grave that the lawnmower runs over all of the graves. It's not meant to be a standalone perpetual care fund just for the veterans in the cemetery, if that makes sense. it's meant to be if I'm reading the statute properly, it's meant to be an aid for those older veteran graves that weren't assisted by the Perpetual Care Fund program that was established in the statutes subsequent or that
So like
Permits,
more Civil War, World War
older
One,
graves,
World War
older
Two,
graves,
maybe.
yeah. If
where
you
that
look-
wasn't a
yeah.
thing.
I have the invoices and yeah, for when we send these out, a lot of these graves are World War II and World War I and Civil War era graves, very, very old graves. And these graves and I just wanna be clear, we don't wanna see any cemetery fall into disrepair, and that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that, and of course, we don't want to, we have a whole other standalone program for the decoration. And that's, Memorial Day was originally Decoration Day. And we have a whole standalone program that provides flag holders and flags. And we fully intend to keep that program funded and established and continue to provide those. It's probably the most visible program in the cemeteries that we have. And we provide those to all the cemeteries, regardless of this program. And they go out in the spring. And that will stay intact. But this program is not that.
The way I see it, we provided enough money for
Correct.
perpetual care.
Yeah.
Step it down so we don't cause too much of a financial hardship for anyone.
Right.
And then there's things in place for our current veterans
Right.
that pass away in the future.
Yeah, they're already charging. If they're selling graves, they're already carving out or should be. I mean, if I can't speak to how they're structuring their finances or doing whatever they're doing, but if they're selling graves or plots right now, one would hope that they're selling it at a rate that they can and putting it into a financial instrument that they can care for all the graves in perpetuity. That's what the statute's for. Perpetual care of these graves. We've run into a problem as of late with some of these cemetery caretakers passing, and then the association has to dissolve, and then it has to be transferred to the municipality, and then it gets caught up in the courts. And then that kind of creates a little bit of an issue, but
So we just need a motion to approve the step down program?
however you would like to proceed. If you want me to proceed with this, or if you, that it's all entirely up to you how you would like to proceed.
I'll make that motion that we approve the step down program as presented.
Oh, second Pete's motion. And for me, it's just being in compliance with state statutes where the amount of expense charged to county for the care may not exceed the charge paid for the care of other graves and cemetery and so forth.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That was a good question, Pete, on the new ones. I hadn't thought about that myself.
Flags.
Do we have a happier
Selling.
topic to end on?
Finances.
Yeah, cemeteries, great.
Be back by your organization.
Yeah. No, we do it
It's not
different.
agenda items.
We have a fund, that's a fund for.
Next, we have Christie on the circuit. With the per diems.
So the per diem for the month of September came to $15,995.60. That was added to the website yesterday. We had a little delay getting it prepared with a technical issue, but we were able to get it up there, and I just need a motion and second if you choose to approve.
Mark moves to approve.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We've already set the next meeting date.
We have to sign for that,
Yes.
but that's just,
Yep, I
just before everybody leaves.
21st.
21st is the next meeting for the special finance committee meeting at 9 o'clock.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Get my gun.
Where you going?
I gotta go